as security votes. If state governors can have 300 million, I'm sure he's running into the billions of dollars. So the reality is this: we are just seeing the manifestations of fraud, which has been which is what the entire DNA of this government is. And it's good that Nigerians will now begin to realize what it is and then hopefully begin to ask questions that they should ask. Because the problem with this country is that we see all these things every day. Each one that comes up gets swept under the carpet and life continues. People tend to wait for their own opportunity to steal. So but we hopefully, with all this amount of fraud going on from all facets of the economy, from all facets of the country, all industries are buried in corruption. Hopefully, Nigerians now begin to ask questions and say, how do we get ourselves out of this mess? Because we're not going to go, we cannot make any progress with this kind of quagmire we're in. Look, which sector can you imagine? Is it the health sector? Look at how much money has been spent on COVID. And it's all fraud because as I'm talking to you now, no hospital in Nigeria, none of the general hospitals has gotten a single new equipment that's used for the breathing. Not one has been purchased for any of these general hospitals. And then where are all these billions going? And it's so every facet of the economy. Is it the transportation sector? We've just seen what has happened with the loans from China. This government, the Buhari administration, living true to type to those who know Buhari, has been mounting a war against corruption. And of course, those who mount, the more you talk about corruption, the more actually they are rooted in corruption. So it's multifaceted. It covers all the fields. So, and it's a maze. How do we start it? The issue is, it depends on the question that we ask, I will now begin to address. But from as if what we're seeing is just manifestation. From day one, this government set out on two things. It mounted a war against insecurity and also a war against corruption. In reality, it was dubious. The security situation started getting worse from the day one, and likewise, corruption has started getting worse from the day one. So,
Barrister Eluchie, excuse me, sorry if I may interrupt you here.
Please go ahead, yes.
Why has it been difficult for President Buhari to effectively fight against corruption in Nigeria? Is it because that he himself is corrupt or that he is incompetent?
Well, I think it's the two. He's both corrupt and incompetent.
Mr. Why do you say so? What is the basis? What is the basis for saying that Buhari is corrupt?
Let me give you good. With regards to, let me start with the incompetence.
Okay.
Most times, Mr. General Buhari will say he's not aware of what's going on in his government. He's not aware. And we appreciate that this is an old man. He might not, an old man who didn't have the best of education. Best of Western education. So he might not have the capacity to understand what goes on in government. And moreover, now that the government has even gone haywire, has gone IT compliant and everything, he is totally bereft. He's out of his depth. He does not understand what is going on. So in that instance, he is incompetent. Now, with regards to corruption, Buhari himself may not even understand how to handle money. But if, as a man, you keep on benefiting from corrupt funds, your friends dole out some kind of privileges for you. Or anytime you are sick, even as a retired general, whenever Buhari traveled abroad, he stayed in the best of hotels. He had the best of medical treatments. His cronies, those who he empowered, were the ones that were actually footing these bills. So he might not himself be taking this cash or taking this loot, but Mr. Buhari, by being a beneficiary of corrupt practices, by helping to set up his cronies, his stooges, who will now, down the line, also take care of him, I think that is corruption. You're not just corrupt when you are able to access the banks or do contracts and steal the money. No. If you stay back and put yourself in a position whereby you can benefit from loot, you can those who you helped set up will now finance you or take care of your needs. You are corrupt. And look at Mr. Buhari. From the time he left the presidency as a head of state till when he became president, Mr. Buhari always had his children go to the most expensive schools in the UK. I mean, he had the best of, he would fly in private jets. He would go to stay in very good hotels, had the best of medical treatment. At what was his pension? At how much was it costing him? So he was indirectly benefiting from those who he set up. And that is a worse, and that is a very smart way to be corrupt. When people check your bank account, you cannot even buy a form for presidential elections. But then suddenly you start spending billions. Your wife starts having wristwatches and Prada shoes and everything. Come on. So he's a very smart man, but as for being corrupt, General Buhari is very corrupt.
Some people,
because he benefits from loot. He benefits from those who he set up and who are corrupt, who now financing him and then helping him to do that. Competent. I said he was very, very incompetent. That's whether he was corrupt. And I said, yes, General Buhari is very corrupt because all through the years, he has been benefiting from corruption. And like we know in law, when you receive stolen properties, you're also a criminal. So if your children's school fees gets paid by those who you helped to be enriched corruptly and you look the other way, if you are also corrupt, even if you have no dime in your own account, but you can live a large life, you can live the life of a multimillionaire, you are corrupt. And that is how it is.
Some people may also argue that the Nigerian system itself enables corruption to take place, and that even the Nigerians themselves have accepted corruption as a way of life. I don't know, do you agree with that assertion?
No, I don't agree with that assertion. Nigerians are very hardworking people. They work hard. If you go to the rural areas where most Nigerians live, they also respect hard work. So Nigerians have not accepted corruption. What has happened is this. The corrupt who have taken over the reins of government, who have taken over power, have made it almost impossible for anybody to even eat without becoming corrupt or without coming to bow to them and to take some largesse from them. So that is what we are now suffering in Nigeria. But in real terms, you are in the UK. Go abroad. Nigerians are known. When things are done by merit, Nigerians excel. When things are done properly, Nigerians will also be properly excelling whatever they're doing. But in the Nigerian politics, in the Nigerian contraption, in our country, we have had characters who have taken over the reins of government and have made it impossible for you to achieve anything meritoriously. And they now make it almost like you must be corrupt to eat. You won't be allowed to even flourish without kowtowing to corrupt practices. So that is why it appears as if Nigerians are corrupt. We have not accepted it. Look at the neighborhood. Look, I mean, where I am now, people still go to the farm, they try to work hard, but then when they do all that stuff, somebody in government just comes and sees whatever they're doing, unless you now give him a bribe before he releases your own stuff to you. So Nigerians are not corrupt. Muhammadu Buhari, one of his trips to the UK, he was asked about Nigerians. He said that Nigerians were lazy, Nigerians were lazy, that they're corrupt. Come on, Nigerians are not corrupt. They are hardworking. They believe in merit, but we have rulers who are extremely corrupt, and they rather when they go out of the shores of Nigeria, they just try to paint Nigeria black, make us look rough, and make Nigerians look terrible. But Nigerians, I assure you, the ones I know, and that there are millions, they are not corrupt. They are upright people, but they have been pushed by these corrupt characters who rule over us to almost have to steal to eat, which should not be.
Yeah, okay, President Buhari has also, we remember the press statement he released about the Nigerian judiciary. We saw that when Buhari came into power, he was energetic in trying to confront the corruption in the Nigerian judiciary, and some even justices of the Supreme Court were arrested by the DSS. Some of them were being prosecuted, and we know that the prosecution has come to nothing. We also see instances where judiciary, when the prosecution for corruption started in the courts, at some point, the delays and the institutional defects in the Nigerian judiciary does not allow the prosecution to go its full length. So in essence, the president has blamed the judiciary for stunting the war against corruption. What do you have to respond to that?
Well, that is in the character of any corrupt person, to always make others look bad, look corrupt. The reality is this, and don't think it's only the judiciary. If you remember during the 8th National Assembly, the executive branch went out of its way to vilify the leadership of the National Assembly. Accused the President of the Senate of armed robbery. They were just like trying to scuttle the National Assembly, make them look very bad in the eyes of Nigerians. That is the same thing that the executive did with the judiciary. You send in masked policemen, security personnel to go and break down the houses of judges in the middle of the night and drag them with their wives in their pajamas for all to see that they were corrupt. When these are people you could have just asked to come and report at an office. So it was just grandstanding to make it appear as if anything was being done. But in reality, what Mr. President, what the Buhari administration did with the judiciary was to put the fear of the SSS and the security operatives on the judiciary so that he can have his way any way he wants it, which is also an act of corruption. Because there are several ways you could have addressed, even if there was corruption in the judiciary, there are several ways, decent ways that you address any corruption in the judiciary. You invite them, but then when you now go out of your way to try to malign the institution, and he was very, very careful about it. They went for the head of the judiciary, the Chief Justice of the Federation. That was the person they went after, and then they used a very flimsy procedure to embarrass him out of office. Now, the whole idea of that push against the judiciary was if the CJ was to tell all the other judges and their judicial officers, if the CJ, the Chief Justice of the country, can be rubbish, then who are you? And that sort of put the fear of the executive branch in all across the judicial offices in the country, which is very unfortunate, which to me was also an act of corruption. And so I don't think he actually meant well by his activities against the judges. I'm not saying that there are no judges who are corrupt, but there are mechanisms. The Nigerian Judicial Council is there, the NCJ. They are there to actually checkmate and take care of corrupt judges. But when you now bastardize that process, when you try to put a scare tactics into it, you scuttle what the judiciary is. You mess up the judiciary, and unfortunately Nigerians mistook that attack against the judiciary as part of the war against corruption. It was not. It was just to bolster the image of the executive. To make Nigerians think that, okay, now we have a saint who is at the helm of affairs of the executive. Every other person, the judiciary, the National Assembly, every other person is a devil except the president. But that is not true. We are now seeing that in reality, this executive headed by Muhammadu Buhari has been one of the most corrupt ever. And nothing testifies to that, more than the fact that the current probe, what's going on with the EFCC. The 8th Assembly severally refused to approve the nomination of this Ibrahim Magu character because they felt he was not fit, he was a corrupt entity. But Mr. President, for reasons best known to him, insisted on having this character to remain as the EFCC chairman. And down the road, 3, 4, 5 years later, what are we seeing? We've seen that the EFCC is a cesspool of corruption itself. Who do we blame for that? None other than the man who refused the advice of the National Assembly and insisted on having this character, Ibrahim Magu, as the EFCC chairman. So you cannot, for instance, separate whatever you are finding, whatever allegations against Ibrahim Magu from the person of Muhammadu Buhari. Because if he had listened to what the National Assembly had said, we wouldn't be in this mess. But we are in this mess because Mr. President had some interest in having Ibrahim Magu. Perhaps now Muhammadu Buhari can come and tell us exactly what his interests were in insisting that Ibrahim Magu should remain as the EFCC chairperson.
What you've just said about the EFCC, brings us to the point of what led to this conversation in the first place. The allegations of corruption in the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Are you saying that the EFCC has not been effective under Ibrahim Mago, under the president, or under Buhari because the EFCC itself is corrupt, or that Mago is corrupt? Generally, what is your opinion regarding the face-off between the Attorney General of the Federation and the acting chairman of the suspended acting chairman of the EFCC, Mago?
Well, to answer that question, we have to even look at the very fundamentals of the EFCC. The EFCC, right from when it was set up by Olusegun Obasanjo, was set up as just a Gestapo outfit to basically attack political enemies and maybe pursue small fries, the Yahoo boys on the streets. That was basically what the EFCC was set up for. And right from the days of Ibrahim Nuhu Ribadu, through Farida Waziri, through Ibrahim Lamrude, and up to the present one, that has been what the EFCC has been doing. Going after the small fries, and then once in a while trying to check those who try to go against the person who is occupying the executive office. The EFCC has not ever, since its incorporation, addressed the issue of corruption. And it is not even set up to address the issue of corruption. Why I say that is this. The EFCC is one of those bodies where you have the chairman, who is also the chief executive officer. It reports to virtually no other person. The chairman, the CEO, reports to himself. That itself is a structure for corruption. So, that is the structure of the EFCC allows for corruption. There is no supervisory board that the EFCC CEO reports to. He is the chief executive officer, and he's also the chairman of the board. So you see corruption embedded in the structure of the EFCC. Now, fast forward to the current Ibrahim, I wouldn't say current, to the just suspended acting chairman of the EFCC. Ibrahim Magu had an opportunity to show he was serious with addressing the issue of corruption. His immediate predecessor in office, Ibrahim Lamrude, was, in fact, when the National Assembly called him to account for the billions that were seized, that the EFCC seized during Ibrahim Lamrude's tenure, the young man's job just skipped, left the country and ran away. So when Ibrahim Magu became the boss of EFCC, and this Lamrude came back on the scene, nobody arrested him. Nobody even tried to pick him up and say, come and explain what happened to all these billions that the National Assembly said you can't account for. So from that very onset, when a man cannot probe his immediate predecessor, that tells you that from the onset, he also wants to do his own stuff. He also wants to get away with his own scams. So, that is common sense. And right from day one, you've seen several instances where this Ibrahim, right from day one, I didn't even have any hope that there will be any change with this character, because it's part of these guys who have been in charge ever since. You have a situation whereby chief of staff of Nuhu Ribadu becomes the next chairman, chief of staff of Ibrahim Lamrude becomes the next chairman. So you have a vicious circle of characters who have a preset idea of how to use EFCC to just reloot the loot. Ibrahim Magu is not the first person who is going to be accused of that. The same thing was, exactly the same things was what his predecessor in office, Lamrude, was accused of. Likewise, Farida Waziri, and even Nuhu Ribadu. So why are we making noise about this guy? This is what they are doing, what they are set up to do. And as it is, most likely, unless there is fundamental change in the structure of the EFCC, whoever gets appointed under this framework to become the new EFCC chair will also do what all his predecessors have done. He will reloot the loot, because these guys have virtually, nobody's checking them. You seize properties, you auction it, nobody's accounting for it, you use the monies as you like, and then at the end of the day, we start saying millions are missing. Why wouldn't the millions miss? The structure has no accountability in it. And in an instance where, in this particular instance, it was quite horrible. The National Assembly was ringing the bell. Remove this Ibrahim Magu guy. He's not good, he's not good, he's not good. Mr. President said no. He will remain there. Now we've seen, so what we have now, the outcome of what Ibrahim Magu has done is obviously what Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari will want him to do. And because otherwise he would have hearkened to the voice of the National Assembly and then done what was needful. But he kept on resubmitting his name, making the National Assembly, making a mockery of our democratic experience. It's quite unfortunate. So with what is going on in the National Assembly, in the probe of the EFCC, it's not going to lead us anywhere. And regarding his relationship with the Attorney General of the Federation, Malami is a very funny character. Several instances, there are things that this guy has done. You wonder, is he a senior lawyer or not? He's supposed to be a senior because of Nigeria, but there are several things he's actually done. You just wonder. Several releases, even actions. I mean, you wonder, is this a lawyer? But he's a senior because of Nigeria. So their relationship is like, who has the ears of Mr. President? They are not even acting based on law. The Attorney General of the Federation, his office was also auctioning properties that were seized. So it was like, I should loot more than you. That is what the quarrel is. The quarrel is not about how to tackle corruption. It is, why are you perhaps looting more than I can loot? Which is unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. But that is where we find ourselves now. If the quarrel among these two officials was for the betterment of Nigeria, was for the greater interest of the country, then we can now discuss it. But as it is now, when you look at the allegations they are throwing around, somebody sold 46 ships or loads of crude, somebody sold houses. So, come on, how does that benefit Nigeria? It is, why are you looting more than I'm looting? Or why are you looting more than I can reloot? And it's a shame. It's a shame that these two men, despite all the mods they are slinging at each other, still remain in office. Tells you that something is wrong with the leadership in this country, or rulership, to be more precise, not leadership, rulership in this country.
Well, another allegation of corruption that has shaken the country is that regarding the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. And Nigerians are really worried by the mud being wrecked from the investigation by the House of Representatives. So what we have from the presidency is a lame press statement that they should allow the forensic analysis to go on. Is there actually a forensic investigation going on? Or if there is, what are the prospects that those who have been indicted in the NDDC will face prosecution? Now that it appears as if the Minister of Niger Delta and the House of and the members of the National Assembly have kind of are in a stalemate. What are we seeing in the NDDC probe, please?
Well, the NDDC probe has two implications or two reasons why it's been propagated this way. One of the reasons, which is very sinister, is to tell the people of the Niger Delta that, yes, you've been clamoring for 13% or for 50%. We've given you 13%. We've put your people in charge of that 13% and see how they are stealing it. That is the sinister motive behind this so-called probe. It is not to either refund any funds or to do whatever. It's just to say, okay, you asked for this and we give it to you. Now your own people are the ones dealing with you. And unfortunately, some of them are biting that kite or agreeing with that narrative, and they're like going back and trying to create issues or have some misunderstanding with their local looters. I mean, local looters, that's what they are. So, but the issue should be beyond that. The other one about the recovery of funds, I mean, nothing will come out of it. Nothing will come out of it. If you looked at the videos emanating from the National Assembly sitting in the House of Reps inquiry, the drama that took place where the MD of the NDDC stylishly fainted. I mean, I don't know why he didn't. He really hit his head hard on the ball, but he restfully fainted. I mean, even an apprentice actor can do far better than that. So it's part of. It's just a charade. It's a charade. Unfortunately, it's a charade. And the figures, the billions being mentioned in this probe, about 80-something billion and other stuff, will just tell you that it's peanuts compared to what is going on elsewhere. In fact, ironically, while the NDCC probe was going on, over 81 billion, 100 billion was said to have been missing in the Northeast Development Commission. 100 billion. a group a commission that is less than 3 years old. 100 billion is already gone in there in that group, but nobody's talking much about it. So the issue is this: the system is like everybody's investing in corruption. I mean,
so sorry, my brother, what you have just said now, what if you have just said, I think that is the point I was trying to ask initially.
Yeah.
You just said that everybody is invested in corruption. So does that imply that even if, whether it is Buhari or there?
Yes.
Because the Buhari we know, well, it's not that we know his deficiencies. We know when he came to power in 1983.
Yes.
So let us assume that Buhari is sincere when he was promising Nigeria that I will fight corruption. But now he has come into office and then observe that everybody, like you said, is invested in corruption. How can you fight against the mountain? Please tell me how. So are we blaming Buhari, or should we blame the Nigerian structure, or do we blame the Nigerian people for what is happening?
Thank you very much. Why we have to blame Buhari solely is this. If you notice, all these characters who are looting and relooting were all appointed by Muhammadu Buhari. All of them without exception were all appointed to their positions of looting by Muhammadu Buhari. In the various villages, wherever these people are coming from, there are people of integrity, people whose character cannot be questioned. They are all there. But this same Mr. Buhari, Mr. Integrity, did not feel any of these people were what's been appointed into these offices. He opted for these characters who are very impure, who will be there to reloot the loot. So that is why I say everything boils down on the head of government. You see, the Nigerian structure is such that the Nigerian president actually wields more power in Nigeria than any other president on earth. He can virtually make a man a woman. I mean, that's the power the president wields. So if in reality, Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari had come in with even a 50% belief in tackling corruption, it would be addressed. For every office he has appointed these people who are relooting, there are 1,000 Nigerians that can go there and do what is right. And look, people are saying, don't bring in policemen. I know, I have encountered several policemen, even very high-ranking policemen, up to the rank of AIGs, who are upright and they live according to their means. But no, those kind of people will not be seen by Mr. Buhari to appoint. I've also seen politicians who have tried to be upright, but they will not be appointed. The ones that will be appointed are those who will loot and reloot. That's why I say, when I say everybody, I am referring to everybody who has been appointed by General Muhammadu Buhari. So at all times, the whole problem comes back to his desk because he could have appointed better people. He could have appointed the real Nigerians who want to create change, and they are bound. They are all over. He could have, for goodness sake, for the post of Attorney General of the Federation, I can count over 1,000 lawyers who can get there and do a far better job. For even the EFCC, there are upright people who can do it. For the Minister of Niger Delta, there are several people who can do better jobs. But who do we get appointed? Those who will loot and reloot. It's unfortunate because we Nigerians were during the 2015 elections. Some Nigerians were deceived by the packaging that was done, the immense packaging that even had some international flavor in it, to package someone like Buhari as a reformed Democrat. When those who actually knew that you cannot really reform this character. So it's unfortunate we're where we are, but that is the reality.
Thank you. At this point, we will welcome the comments or questions from our guests tonight and our listeners. If you have any question, please, now is the time to start throwing them up. Or if you have any comment to make, right. We have Dr. George Davidson. Can we hear from you? If you will please position your camera very well, or if you position yourself very well so that you'll be properly. Thank you very much.
Good evening, gentlemen. Well, I want to appreciate the guest tonight. He has spoken eloquently. Like I will always say, there is no harm in airing the view, the ills in our society. We will continue to air them. even though it might seem not to be making impact now. I recall 2015, around June to be precise, shortly after the handover, I was privileged. If you take our memory back, recall that the president didn't move into the office. He was staying behind the DSS, where they call ASO Drive. I was privileged to meet him on a Friday. I met him one-on-one when I made up my mind to give him a classified information. And he assured me that I should go ahead, that I will get his support in every way. I met him one-on-one, breaking all protocols. But I think what happened after that, I found myself in the prison. To buttress what he is saying, I was privileged again to meet Malami when I came out of the prison. That is for the whistle I blew. That turned out it was a 43 billion naira whistle I blew. I met Malami. In my presence, part of those who actually committed this health sector fraud that I reveal, I met a professor who came to tell Malami. I was in the reception. The professor was in the reception. I was telling Malami that, look, they came after the meeting with Malami, because they went in before me. Malami never wanted to see me again. I sent my agent and met Malami's staff. I'm giving a background, please, so please bear with me. And it shows that the investigation all was compromised. Now, let's talk about, when they said, our rulers, we've never had leaders. I love the word of our guests. We've never had leaders. We've been having rulers. Our rulers, I don't think they have the dream of the next generation or the Nigerian child. It's about looting and relooting. But my question is this. How long will this continue? The apparatus of the government are actually being used. I will cite instances. The Inspector General of Police, starting from Arazi. Arazi was my personal friend. And one thing with them, the moment you give them key information, intelligence, have overwhelming, evidence, they turn around and they use it to make money. They confront the suspect with the evidence, and then you, the reporter or the whistleblower, you are in trouble. Now, with Magu, it came to play. I was in touch with Magu yesterday, one-on-one. You understand? What I'm trying to say is that the system need overhaul. I don't know how it will be done, because some of us, I've never voted. I've never wanted anything political in my life. But you know, I was so overwhelmed because in 83, I was a child in Jos. I was so believing in Buhari. And I didn't know that this Buhari is a package Buhari. And I didn't know that this Buhari, well, in fact, I had a military man who served with him who told me that it's just that I didn't know that Buhari didn't change a minute. That is the Buhari that part of Buhari's problem is that he doesn't even know how to spend the money if you give to him, that he's dull. And that is part of corruption. Ask me. It's part of corruption. Because when you are not in charge, when you are not in charge of your house, you are not in charge of your family. I'm giving an example now, because Nigeria is a family in Buhari's hand. If you cannot regulate yourself, how can you regulate a larger society? So I don't know. I love this participation. I'm in the field. Indo that is here will tell you. Then you know I'm in the field. We create the news, we see the news. But if you see what Malami is doing, Malami will be contesting for governorship any moment, I believe, you know. He will be contesting. And I will tell the panel tomorrow or next, because I'm being invited, to tell them that, look, this is exactly the issue. It's about who loot most. Who loot most. Magu, to me, I know all of them, is a better criminal. Sorry, they've not been convicted, but we are all seeing it. Magu is a better person. Magu want to come out for governorship election, which we will see in the shortest time. But he believes the only problem he has is Magu. So earlier they removed Magu from his way. I don't believe in any of them. It's the system. And it's a revolving cycle. It's a revolving cycle.
All right,
they will continue. Yeah.
George, we thank you very much for this contribution. We will take the response of our guests to the points, some of the points we have raised, if you noticed any.
Yes.
Yes, Barrister Eluchie.
Okay. Yes. As to how we can move this or change the narrative, our current dire narrative, I think the way forward is this. It's a long haul. It's a long distance race. The change we're expecting may occur in our lifetimes if we are very lucky. But the whole idea is to sensitize the population, because one of the things that has kept us where we are is ignorance, palpable ignorance in the society. I mean, when I say ignorance, I'm not really just referring to those who are not educated. There are even the educated people who are also very ignorant of what is going on in the country. So those who can write should continue to write. Those who can talk should continue to talk. Because we need to build that critical mass in society to be able to confront these rascals who have been ruling over us. It's not something that an individual can go alone and then achieve success. But you have to keep on sensitizing the masses, sensitizing people. It's true that there are several obstacles on the path of that sensitization, such as when you are trying to do your best, then they'll bring in issues of ethnicity, religion, tribalism to create a wedge. But then you have to continue to push and push and push, and then that's the most you can do, because they have the instruments of terror, they have the military, they have the police, they have everything, they have the prisons. So, but you have to keep on pushing. That is the way societies get changed. I mean, you have to just think in the long term. People like us, I know that even appearing this, there's a risk element in it. But who cares? There's even a risk element by sleeping in your house. So the reality is this: do the bit you can. If people get sensitized enough and are able to now create that change, wonderful. If they are not, perhaps the next generation will benefit from it. But we cannot tire from trying to cause this change, trying to speak truths to whoever, whether it is power or whatever, but we must continue to push. And then you don't say that we will all keep quiet and not say the truth because we fear incarceration or we fear death, because we'll all die one day. And then if you fear incarceration, you are already incarcerated. I mean, so why don't you feel free and do what you can do while you can do it? That's the reality about it. And quite well, the people who are up against are very lethal. They're very deadly, because the sums involved here is like incredible, billions of dollars. So they will do whatsoever they can, but that is why it is essential that we should continue to ensure that people get aware, become knowledgeable of the facts. And then it's a daunting task, no doubt, but it's a task that must be done.
If we look at I thank you very much for what you have just said about talking about the solutions. If we look at the institutions in Nigeria that have been charged with tackling corruption, how do we strengthen them to do their task? How do we enable them to have the powers they need to deal with corruption in the first place? Let me kind of illustrate my question. When President Olusegun Obasanjo came into power, the first thing he did is to create the ICPC and the EFCC. And then when President Buhari came to power, one of the things he did was also to speed up the implementation of the was there a law for the Whistleblowers Act? But at least he put it into practice, the whistleblower system. Right now, I don't know the extent to which that whistleblower system is still being implemented. But how do we strengthen some of these institutions? Because if we depend only on an individual, for instance, I'm sure that, take the UK, once you give an individual power without responsibility, there is the tendency that such power will have to be abused. But if there are institutions that deals with that, then it no longer depends on an individual. So whether the individual is good or bad, the institutions will make sure that the system is functioning. So how does that apply to Nigeria, for instance? How do we strengthen the institutions to deal with corruption?
Well, we still have the fundamental problem we have with the structure of the country. I mean, we have a structure that is skewed or erected not to succeed. Nigeria's structure, I mean, no matter, in every area you want to look at it, the structure is critical. It's when you have an Inspector General of Police who is based in Abuja, who decides who becomes the DPO in the Barungala or in Itigidi, in Cross River, whatever. I mean, it's impossible to actually excel or to even succeed. So the structure of the country is critical to the problems we are having, and then we have to tweak it. But pending when we tweak that structure, when we can restructure effectively, the issue of rulership or leadership comes into play. If we had a ruler or a leader who was like a benevolent dictator, whatever you can call it, because if you look at the Asian tigers and you ask yourself, how did they, even in the Latin American countries, how did they jump over the poverty hurdle and then become like fledgling economies? You need people at the helm of affairs who are patriotic, who have the interest of the country at heart. Unfortunately, we've not had that in this country. We've just had people who want to just steal and steal and steal. If we had people who had the interest of this country at heart, the structures we have is good enough for whatever we want to do. Let me give an example. While he was president, Ibrahim Babangida had all the professors in the world. In fact, he used more professors in his government than any other regime ever. And they had all kinds of agencies and protocols that could have moved Nigeria forward. But the problem we had then was, even as the head of state then, he did not have real patriotic zeal. He also wanted to enrich himself. And once people who you appoint look up and say, okay, Mr. President himself or the head of state himself is not being very objective, it's not being very, very transparent, the whole thing collapses. So the problem we've had, that's why we cannot do without it, is the issue of leadership. Once we have somebody who is focused, like I said, the Nigeria, we have more than enough flaws. We don't have to retweak or to whatever. We have all the enabling agencies. We even have more than enough agencies in this country to ensure that we do things right. But as long as those agencies will look at the top and they see that we have at the top a man who is not upright, a man who can still continue to benefit from corrupt practices, a man who will surround himself with cronies, his nephews, his in-laws, not people who are even meritoriously appointed, but they are just there because they are from his immediate environment. It won't work. So that is the issue we've had in this country. And how will it be changed? One, there could be a mistake. I mean, that's why I hope that maybe one of these days there'll be a mistake in their choice of somebody who will become the leader or the ruler. And then things will get it right. Or people will be sensitized enough to now take back sovereignty and challenge those who have stolen sovereignty from them. Because sovereignty is actually for the interest of the people. So those who are the helm of affairs, who are eluding the loot, are actually stole the sovereignty from the people. So if there are two options, either we keep on sensitizing people and then hopefully down the line, they will become conscious enough to take back the sovereignty, or we'll be on the watch out for a mistake, a crack in the wall. And these characters who are holding the whole system by the jugular will make a mistake and something else will happen. Mistakes are not impossible. Let me give you an example. In Russia, there was a mistake. Somehow they got Gorbachev to become the Secretary General of the Communist Party. And what happened? The whole thing was collapsed. And perhaps also in the US, there's a mistake now. Let's just see how that one works out. But mistakes can occur. A mistake occurring, and then the people being sensitized to be able to take back sovereignty when they want to take it back. But for now, our people have been bludgeoned into a living dead situation. Nigerians are like the walking dead. They can't even think straight. Most people can't think straight because you are just struggling to eat, to eke out a living. But people have to be empowered that, look, your position is deliberate. It's not as if you need to be there. Your position is deliberate by those who want to continue to eat the public, to keep on relating the loot. So that's the way forward.
So that's in the long term. Now that Buhari is in his, in the second year of the final term in office, are Nigerians now sentenced to simply wait until 2023, maybe for a mistake to happen, or does Buhari still have an opportunity to redeem himself, to redeem the promise he made to Nigerians in 2015 to tackle corruption? Or are we now sentenced to wait for another 2 years, or is there an opportunity for him to redeem himself?
No, well, there is no issue of waiting for another 2 years. I said there are two options. Either you wait for a mistake to occur, or you take back your sovereignty. I mean, the people can do that at any time when they feel sufficiently mobilized.
How can they do that? How can the people take back sovereignty?
Well, by one thing is mass demonstrations. There's a right to protest against bad governance. I mean, it's a fundamental right. People have a right to congregate freely. So if that congregation becomes strong enough and you decide to actually take back the reins of government, it is possible, but it has to be done in a constitutional manner, and it's very, very possible. Once there's proper leadership of the crowd of such demonstrations, it is not impossible, and it wouldn't be the first time it has happened in a democracy. And when such a thing happens, when they clamor for an exit, becomes overwhelming. I'm sure if Muhammadu Buhari is the reformed Democrat we've been told he is, and the people are not saying, Mr. President, resign and go, he will find a way to resign and go. I have severally called for him to resign, because I believe he's at his age, with his level of the way he acts, his mannerisms and everything. I think it is impossible to retool Muhammadu Buhari, to make him change. It is not possible. And so the whole idea is, if he knows he cannot continue to rule, he can do simply, and he's been said to be a man of integrity, he should step aside. He should sign and resign, because he's overwhelmed. He's overwhelmed in all manners of, I mean, a president that comes and tells us that his service chiefs have failed him, and they've overstayed their stay in office, and you can't sack them. So it's really worrisome. So, I mean, he can resign and let somebody else have a shot at governance, because for now, it's a near hopeless situation for the country, for the contraption.
All right. My final question, unless we have any of our guests who want to make any comments or ask any question, my final question would be, we see what is happening in Mali now, mass demonstrations against an incumbent administration, which the opposition are now keyed into and want to force the Malian president to resign. We have also seen mass demonstrations in Algeria against a government that people feel wasn't performing. We have seen mass insurrections in Venezuela, where poverty is pushing people to say, no, enough is enough. We want this government to go. We have seen all these things. But coming to Nigeria, why is the civil society docile? I live in 1986. It was just a mere rumor in a magazine, Ebony magazine, that the president's wife is amassing this amount of wealth. That we have the SAP riots, where we feel the president is trying to bring in a policy that people felt will pauperize the people. Now in Nigeria, now you have stories of one single individual stealing 200 billion, 300 billion, and people will just take it as, you know, they argue about it in WhatsApp groups and Facebook and in Twitter. So what has happened to the Nigerian civil populace that this thing doesn't trigger outrage anymore? What has happened?
In those countries you mentioned, Mali, Algeria, you are referring to nations. Nations, a nation in the real sense of the word, people who have a similar objective heading in one direction. Nigeria's case is peculiar. Nigeria is a contraption. I mean, there's nothing about no effort has been made at nation building. So you now have people who are existing at diametrically opposed to each other. And the system, the government invests in that division and has been investing in it for a while to ensure that the people don't come together. The poor man in Katsina, the poor man in Owerri, the poor man in Igbokuta in Lagos, they all have the same problems. Whether they are the fact that they are Fulani or that they are Igbo or Yoruba or whatever, it's still material, and their religion is not material. So, but you have a system whereby the rulers invest in these crevices, in these divides, to ensure that whenever there is any move to riot or to move against these looters then they bring in this trump card of tribalism It's not for my tribe. It's not for my religion and all that stuff. And it dissipates the energy of the masses. The other thing these rulers do is this. They have empowered some in the military that will go there and shoot to kill. In Mali, in Algeria, in all these other countries you mentioned, when push comes to shove, the military will not shoot their own people. But you have people who, because of the amount of money these guys are massing out in the looting of this contraption, they bring soldiers that are going there to mow down the crowd. They don't give a damn. And people are aware of this. So these are the issues that make Nigerians try to think twice before even coming out to demonstrate. Because you know that you're going to come up against rascal elements in the military and the security agencies that will shoot to kill. They even get promoted. They even get elevated when they do that. No, there's no consequences for using for shooting in that way, and so it makes it impossible for the people to coalesce, for the congregate, and then move against these rulers. But like I keep on saying, that is why we need to continue to sensitize people, and then for them to realize that, look, you're gonna die one day. Whether you die in your sleep or you die by the bullets of these rascals, you're gonna die one day. So if you realize that the death, even slow death based on hunger and disease, is worse than being hit by a bullet, you make your options. So hopefully Nigerians will begin to weigh their choices, weigh their options, and realize that we really cannot allow this nonsense to continue. We cannot simply allow, because it's dawning on everybody. With what is going on in Europe and America, it is now clear to everybody, look, you're better off taking care of the problems here than thinking an easier way out is to step out of the country or to check out. We are stuck here and we have to get this country working again. So we hope that Nigerians will begin to think, count their, with their options effectively, and realize that these rascal elements who have been ruling over us for donkey years have to be confronted for our own good, for the good of the country and for the good of the nation, because ultimately Nigeria is a wonderful country. It's a beautiful place. If you've like me have had the opportunity of staying in different parts of the country, you hardly have any country that is as endowed as this country anywhere in the world. So we should try and do whatever we can do to make sure this country gets on its foot and working. But to do that, we have to ensure that these rascals elements who are our rulers for now have to be shown the way out. And we just have to do it one way or the other.
Thank you very much, Barrister Eluchie. It's been a worthwhile evening. Before I finally let you go, you are the first person I have this word contraption. I think you are the first person that started using this word contraption in Nigeria. Why do you refer to Nigeria as a contraption? I stand to be corrected whether you are the first person, but to me, you are the first person I started to read contraption from. So why do you refer to Nigeria as a contraption?
No, I think I'm about the first person, because it's good to hear that word is getting currency. Yesterday I had Wale Soyinka also use the word contraption. I've had Babangida also use the word contraption.
Babangida uses contraption.
Oh yes, and there was an interview he was using the word contraption to describe Nigeria. The reality is that it has to dawn on us that as we are now, we're a contraption. And it's not that negative word. It's just that the reality is that we're a contraption. People from everywhere, we are just together, tied together. Some are trying to get out of the mess we're in. Some want to say that Nigeria is a contraption. We're not even a nation. The lies, if we continue to dwell in those lies that we are a nation, we will miss the mark. But when you realize that we're a contraption, that we can make well, let us not miss this word. We can make this contraption. The US is a contraption, but they've been able to gather their contraption and make it into a very strong nation. But in our own case, we are allowing this contraption to be dismembered in our very own eyes. Even villages want to go out of the country. So Nigeria is a contraption, that's the truth. The earlier we realize and begin to address ourselves in that way and say, okay, we are a contraption. What do we now want? Do we want to make it better, or do we want to go our separate ways? For me, I believe we can still make Nigeria better. But if that making Nigeria better is at the cost of lives, then we may have to go our separate ways. But Nigeria is a contraption, without doubt.
On that note, I say thank you very much, Barrister Eluchie, for gracing us with your presence tonight. And I thank all our guests and all our listeners on Facebook that are following us on the other social media. Well, thank you very much for listening in tonight. Tomorrow we are having a different speaker. We are having Mazi Afamosi, who is the former General Secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association. His own topic will be the Nigerian Bar Association, elections and judicial review, judicial reform. So thank you very much, Barrister Eluchie, for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. And to our guests, we thank you very much, our listeners. Thank you very much for being with us. And we say have a good evening.